My name's Clara, and if you're picturing some high-flying business mogul in heels, you've got the wrong girl. Sure, my dad's a big deal in the corporate world, owns a company so large it's got its own gravity. And yeah, my education wasn't cheap. But me? I'm more at home in a cubicle than a corner office, much to my family's dismay. My brother, Alex, he's the golden boy, ready to step into dad's shoes and run the show. Me, on the other hand? I've told dad more times than I can count. I'm not cut out for that throne. Leave me out of the dynasty drama. Leadership and all that pressure? Not my jam. Then, there's Ethan. Picture this, I'm out with friends, trying to unwind at this dive that's seen better days. In walks Ethan, tray in hand, smile that could knock you sideways. A waiter, sure, but with a vibe that caught me off guard. His simplicity, the way he looked at life, it was like a breath of fresh air. We got to talking, and it wasn't long before I realized we were on the same wavelength. Interests, hobbies, the way we saw the world, it was all eerily in sync. My folks, when they got wind of him, couldn't help but snicker. A waiter? They'd laugh, as if I'd brought home a three-headed alien. This is just a fling, they insisted. But it wasn't. Not to me. Clara, seriously? My mom would say, voice dripping with disbelief. You could have anyone, and you choose a waiter? I shot back. Yeah, because he's real. He gets me. Not like the stuffed suits you parade around. Dad wasn't thrilled either. You're playing house with a boy who serves drinks for a living, he'd grumble. But see, that's where they got it all wrong. Ethan wasn't about the money or the status. He was about living, really living. And that was everything I wanted. Look, Dad, I'm in love with him, I told them, standing my ground. Ethan's different. He's not caught up in all this. I waved a hand, encompassing the invisible weight of our family's expectations. They tried to laugh it off, shake their heads like I was just going through a phase. But I knew. Ethan was the real deal. The conversations we'd have, the way he'd look at me as if I was the only person in the room, it was something I'd never found in the glossy world I came from. So, when Ethan and I talked about taking the next step, it wasn't about the lavishness or the spectacle. It was about us, two people who'd somehow found each other against the odds. I was all in, ready to defy expectations and start a life with the guy who'd served drinks at a bar but ended up capturing my heart. Now, here's where things took a turn for the serious. Ethan, out of the blue, pops the question. And when I say pops the question, I mean in the most straightforward, Ethan-like way possible. No down on one knee drama, just straight up. Marry me, Clara? Took me a hot second to process, not gonna lie. But then, it was like everything clicked into place. Yeah, Ethan. Let's do it. I found myself saying, and just like that, we were on the fast track to tying the knot. Now, here's the kicker, from meeting to marrying, it was a whirlwind. Didn't even bring him home before we got hitched. I know, sounds crazy, right? But something about it felt right. Just us, moving forward together, no looking back. The wedding was nothing fancy, mind you. Kept it low-key, just close family. Dad, though, he couldn't quite mask that look of disbelief. Picture this, the big-shot business magnate, forced to watch his daughter say "I do" to a waiter, in a ceremony that probably cost less than one of his business lunches. But here's the thing, as much as Dad looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, when it came down to it, he came through. After the ceremony, he pulled me aside, and in his own gruff way, he said, "Congratulations, Clara." Sure, it might not have been the glowing approval I'd hoped for, but coming from him, it meant something. So there we were, me and Ethan, officially hitched. Despite the odds, the doubts, and the disapproving glares, we'd done it. Started our own little rebellion, built on nothing but love and a dash of defiance. The charm of my small apartment quickly gave way to the challenges of daily life. It was the kind of place that felt cozy to me, but seemed to take Ethan by surprise. One evening, as we maneuvered around the cramped kitchen, I tried to gauge his feelings about our living situation. So, you're really okay with this place? It's a bit different from what you were expecting, right? Ethan paused, a half-hearted attempt at a smile, crossing his face. Yeah, it's snug. I mean, I didn't expect a palace, but this, it's fine, really. It's got character, he said, but his words carried a weight of unspoken thoughts. Our domestic life started showing cracks pretty early on. Ethan's aversion to household chores became a point of contention between us. It wasn't like he was overburdened with work, his part-time job left him plenty of hours in the day. Ethan, the dishes are piling up. Can you help out a bit? I asked one night, exhaustion seeping into my voice. Come on, Clara. You know I'm all thumbs with this stuff. Can't we just get takeout or something? He replied, dodging the responsibility with a grin that was less charming by the day. The issue of career advancement, or my deliberate lack of it, became a recurring theme. Ethan couldn't understand my decision to remain in a non-leading role within my father's company. Babe, you've got to think about the future. When are you planning to step up at work? There's so much potential for you there. Ethan pressed, his frustration growing. I sighed, the conversation feeling all too familiar. Ethan, we've talked about this. I'm happy where I am. I don't need a title to find fulfillment. But that's just it, Clara. You could have both, the title and the happiness. You're not seeing the big picture, he argued, his patience thinning. The more we talked, the more disconnected we felt. One night, the conversation took a turn that left a deep mark on our relationship. Ethan, understand that I'm not driven by the same things as you. I don't measure my worth by a job title or a fat paycheck, I tried to explain, hoping for some semblance of understanding. He looked at me, disbelief and frustration written all over his face. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Clara. You're sitting on a goldmine of opportunity, and you're too blind to see it, he exclaimed, his words cutting deep. Is that what you think of me? That I'm blind? Stupid? I shot back, the hurt clear in my voice. No, Clara, I just think you could do so much more, Ethan said, his voice softening, but the damage was done. Our once peaceful home became a battleground of ideals and expectations. The man I married, who shared my dreams of simplicity and genuine connection, seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. The day had been long, the kind that drags your spirits down with every passing hour. I was looking forward to nothing more than kicking off my shoes and collapsing on the couch. But the universe, it seemed, had a different plan in store for me. The moment I stepped into our apartment, my heart sank. Water. Everywhere. The neighbors above had managed a spectacular feat of indoor plumbing failure, effectively turning my modest living space into a shallow swimming pool. With a heavy sigh, I dialed my parents, my voice catching as I explained the disaster that had unfolded. There was a brief pause on the line, a pause that carried the weight of 1,000 words, none of them good. But then, Dad's voice cut through the silence, a rare note of warmth softening the edges of his usual sternness. Of course, you both can stay here. We'll be glad to have you, he said, and I could almost hear the smile in his words. It was a relief, yes, but also a harbinger of the awkwardness to come. Living under my parents' roof with Ethan was not how I envisioned our newlywed days. Yet, here we were, about to dive into that very scenario. The relief of having a place to stay was quickly overshadowed by the dread of what this temporary arrangement might unearth. My parents' mansion was worlds away from our humble apartment, both literally and figuratively. How will Ethan take this luxury, and will it affect our future relationship? As these thoughts churned through my mind, I began to pack for what I hoped would be a brief stay. Ethan was skeptical, to put it mildly, but where else were we supposed to crash? Your parents' place, really? That's our best option? Ethan groaned as we packed a couple of bags. His tone, a mix of disbelief and annoyance, didn't make this any easier. Yeah, really. Unless you're hiding a luxury condo I don't know about, I shot back, trying to keep the mood light. He didn't bite, just shuffled around, muttering something about independence and pride. The moment we stepped into the mansion, I could feel Ethan tense up. The opulence of my childhood home never fazed me much, but through Ethan's eyes, it was like stepping onto another planet. "This is, wow. Just wow," Ethan whispered, looking around. His usual confidence seemed to shrink a bit more with each step. Dad was, surprisingly, the first to break the ice. "Welcome. Make yourselves at home," he said, though his smile was more of a formality than a warm greeting. Ethan nodded, offering a tight-lipped smile in return. The first few days were awkward. Ethan wandering the halls like a lost tourist, and me, trying to navigate the sudden shift in our dynamic. It wasn't long before Ethan's frustration found its outlet. One evening, over dinner, he blurted out, "So, when do I get the grand tour of the family biz? Maybe find a little corner office for myself?" His tone was joking, but the undercurrent wasn't lost on anyone, least of all my father. Dad nearly choked on his drink, coughing out a laugh. "The company? Son, it takes more than ambition. It takes years of training and the right background," he said, each word deliberate, a polite but firm shutdown. Ethan's cheeks flushed a deep red, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "Right, of course. Silly me," he muttered, pushing his food around his plate. Later, in the privacy of our temporary room, the dam broke. "Can you believe him? The right background? What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan fumed, pacing back and forth. I sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Ethan, you know how my dad is. He didn't mean." "Didn't mean what, Clara? That I'm not good enough? Because that's exactly how it sounded." He cut me off, his frustration boiling over. "It's not about good enough. It's just his way. Come on, you know this isn't forever. We'll figure something out." I tried to soothe the tension, reaching out for his hand. He pulled away gently, the anger in his eyes softening to something more hurt, more lost. "Yeah, I guess. It's just hard, you know? Feeling like I'm on the outside, even here with you." The conversation lingered in the air, unsolved, a reminder of the widening gap between our worlds. Ethan's struggle to fit in, my family's unspoken expectations, and our own unresolved tensions. It was a cocktail for disaster, shaken not stirred. Back in our apartment, life seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy, or so I thought. But as the days turned into weeks, Ethan's presence at home grew thinner, his absences longer. The apartment felt more like a ghost town, haunted by the remnants of his hurried mornings and late nights, dirty laundry, unwashed dishes, and the cold silence of missed conversations. Whenever I'd ask, his responses were always the same: "Work slammed. You know how it is." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just the restaurant keeping him away. Feeling more alone than ever, I reached out to an old family friend and the head of security at my dad's company, Mark. He was more like an uncle to me, always there when I needed advice or help. "Mark, I need a favor. Can you keep an eye on Ethan? Something's off, and I need to know." Mark's voice was a mix of concern and resolve. "Clara, you know I'd do anything for you. Consider it done." True to his word, Mark came back to me with news that shattered my world into pieces. Ethan wasn't just working late, he was having an affair. The woman? A wealthy heiress, often seen cozying up to Ethan at the restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan, who, at the very beginning of our acquaintance, said he considered my modest living endearing, now sought the company of someone whose life was defined by the very opulence I shied away from. Armed with undeniable proof, I confronted Ethan. The moment he saw the photos, his facade crumbled, replaced by a mix of defiance and mockery. "So, what? Yes, she's ambitious, young, beautiful, everything you're not." His words were a poison-tipped arrow, aimed straight at my heart. The pain was immediate, a sharp contrast to the slow, numbing realization that the man I loved, the man I married, was a stranger to me. "I want a divorce," I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. It wasn't a question, nor a plea. It was a statement, clear and irrevocable. Ethan's laughter faded, replaced by a resigned nod. Fine. As simple as that, our marriage was over. The divorce proceedings were a blur, a period marked by signatures and silent meals, each of us lost in our own thoughts. When it was all said and done, Ethan left, taking with him the remnants of our life together, leaving behind a void filled with betrayal and heartache. When I told my parents about the divorce, they were, well, more relieved than anything. "We never did see what you saw in him," Dad said, barely hiding his satisfaction over the end of my marriage to Ethan. It stung, but part of me knew they were right. Ethan and I were worlds apart, a fact that became painfully clear by the end. Then, out of the blue, my brother, Alex, dropped the bombshell. He was ditching the corporate life to seek enlightenment in India, of all places. "I'm done with the rat race, Clara," he told me over the phone. "I need something more, something real." I remember pacing around my now too quiet apartment, phone pressed to my ear, trying to talk some sense into him. "But the company? Dad? You're just going to leave all that behind?" "It's not my path, Clara." I thought it was, but I was wrong. "You'll see, there's more to life than board meetings and balance sheets," Alex replied, his voice calm, resolved. Dad was beside himself. With Alex out of the picture, he turned to me. "Clara, you're all I have left. I need you to step up," he said, desperation creeping into his usually unflappable demeanor. "Me? Dad, I don't know the first thing about running a company. I can barely manage my own life," I protested, the idea of filling my brother's shoes nothing short of terrifying. "You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. Give it a try, for me," Dad urged. So, I did. With more than a little trepidation, I started as his deputy. Every day was a steep learning curve, filled with meetings I didn't understand and decisions I felt unqualified to make. But as time went on, something strange happened. I started getting the hang of it. "Dad, I think we should reconsider our strategy on the Henderson project. If we pivot now, we can save the investment," I found myself saying during one of our strategy sessions. Dad raised an eyebrow, mulling over my words. "You know what, Clara? That's not a bad idea at all. Let's do it." To my own surprise, my advice paid off. The Henderson project became one of our biggest successes that quarter. Slowly, I began to see the potential Dad saw in me. I made decisions, navigated complex negotiations, and, bit by bit, started to enjoy the challenge. One evening, after reviewing the company's quarterly results, which were better than they'd been in years, Dad looked at me, a mix of pride and astonishment on his face. "You know, Clara, we're on the rise, and it's all thanks to you. You've got a knack for this, a real instinct for business." Hearing that from Dad, considering all my initial doubts and fears, was a moment of unexpected validation. I was making a difference, finding my place in a world I never thought I'd belong to. "Looks like I found my successor after all," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. After everything settled into a new kind of normal, out of nowhere, Ethan popped back up into my life, or at least he tried to, through social media. His messages were something else, boasting about his flashy new life, flaunting pictures with his fancy cars, and those trips to places that looked more like magazine covers than real spots. The guy had a nerve, especially tossing in those jabs, calling me outdated, a loner destined to stay buried in paperwork at some desk. It was almost funny, how he thought his words would cut deep. Maybe once they would have, but not anymore. I've climbed my way up, sitting in the director's chair at my father's company, a position he mocked me for not wanting, yet here I was, excelling. I didn't bother clapping back or setting him straight about where I stood now. What was the point? Instead, I hit the block button. But Ethan, ever the persistent one, kept coming back with new accounts, spewing the same old spiel. That's when I figured it was time for a bit of déjà vu. I reached out to Mark, our head of security. "Mark, it's showtime again. Can you do me a favor and keep tabs on Ethan? I've got a hunch he's all talk." Mark was on it, no questions asked. The report he brought back had me in stitches. Ethan, living the high life? More like playing pretend. Turns out, his extravagant lifestyle was just smoke and mirrors, the fancy cars rented for show, those luxury vacations. All on his new wife's dime. Seeing all this laid out, I couldn't help but laugh. Ethan hadn't changed one bit, still chasing after whatever glitters, thinking it's gold. I flipped through the report, each page a confirmation that I had made the right decision. The Ethan I once knew, or thought I knew, was a mirage, and I was way past wandering back into that desert. So, I leaned back in my chair, the report on Ethan's glamorous life discarded on my desk, and I smiled. Not because of where he ended up or the choices he made, but because of where I was, firmly in control of my story, with a clear view of where I was headed. A few weeks after I closed the chapter on Ethan and his charades, I found myself at a social event, mingling and doing the whole networking dance that's part of the CEO gig now. That's when I saw him, Ethan, with his new wife on his arm, looking every bit the part of the man who had moved on to better things. Ethan, never one to miss an opportunity to show off, nudged his wife, nodding in my direction. "That's my ex-wife over there," he said loud enough for me to hear, smirking. Never really made much of herself. His wife, young and apparently quite impressionable, laughed, a clear, ringing sound that cut through the murmur of the event. It stung, but only for a moment. I was about to walk away when an elderly man approached us, his face red with anger. "Young man, how dare you speak of Clara like that?" he thundered, turning heads all around us. "Do you have any idea who she is? She's the CEO of her father's company, a very successful one at that, and a potential investor for us." Ethan's face lost all color, his smirk replaced by a look of utter disbelief. He stammered, trying to form words, but nothing coherent came out. His wife, meanwhile, looked mortified, her earlier laughter now a distant memory as she absorbed her father's words. Seizing the moment, I decided to twist the knife just a little. "You know, he wasn't just seeing you back when we were having our troubles," I said to her, my voice steady. "There were others. And apparently, his habits haven't changed." I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos Mark, our security head, had compiled, Ethan cozying up to another woman, clearly not his wife. The reaction was instant. The young woman's face crumbled into a mix of hurt and rage. You're lying," she shrieked at me, but one look at Ethan's face, and she knew the truth. The scene that unfolded was chaos, shouting, accusations flying, Ethan trying to placate his irate wife, and the guests at the event trying not to stare too obviously. I couldn't help but smile as I turned on my heel and walked away. Ethan's life, it seemed, was unraveling at the seams, and while I took no joy in his misery, there was a certain satisfaction in seeing karma at work. I had moved on, grown stronger and more successful than Ethan could ever dream to be. After that whole debacle at the event, word got around fast. Ethan's life did a complete nosedive. His wife, fed up with his cheating ways, kicked him to the curb. The fancy lifestyle he flaunted? Gone. His father-in-law reclaimed the pricey car and swanky apartment he had been so proud of. As for his so-called high society buddies, they vanished quicker than smoke in the wind, leaving Ethan to fend for himself. Last I heard, he was back to waiting tables, drowning in a sea of debt he had racked up trying to maintain a facade of wealth and success. It's funny how life works out. I couldn't help but think back to when Ethan called me all sorts of names, laughed at my simple living and ambition. Now, he's the one scrambling to make ends meet, serving tables just like when we first met. I can't say I wish bad on him, but there's a part of me that feels like this was a long time coming. In the midst of all this, something unexpected happened. I met someone new, someone who's the polar opposite of Ethan. This guy, let's call him Jack, has his feet firmly on the ground. He's not caught up in appearances or chasing after the high life. He values the real things, honesty, hard work, and a good laugh over a cup of coffee. The kind of stuff that lasts. Jack and I, we clicked right from the start. No games, no pretenses. Just two people enjoying each other's company, finding joy in the simple things. It's refreshing, you know? To be with someone who gets you, who doesn't need the glitz and glam to feel important. I guess what I'm trying to say is, life has a way of coming full circle. I've gone through my share of ups and downs, dealt with betrayal, and came out stronger on the other side. Meeting Jack, seeing Ethan's downfall, it's all part of this crazy journey. It's like I've finally closed a painful chapter of my life and started a new one, filled with hope and genuine happiness.